At the start of the 100-meter race, everybody has the same goal. And when you're in the Olympic final, I'm pretty sure everybody is trying as hard as they can. So what dictates the winner? Well, it's the quality of the systems that they've had in place for the 6 to 12 months prior, which have compounded daily and resulted in the individual achieving their desired outcome after a sustained period. They win because they were set up for success from the very start. Now, this is a powerful methodology, and it's one that you can directly apply to your business to ensure that in 6 months' time, your desired outcome is borderline guaranteed, whilst your competitors will still be trying to just work harder. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through two main things. One, how to set goals the right way so that we can actually ensure they happen given the right system. And two, how to design a system that ensures the input required to achieve the outcome that you want the most. Now, full disclaimer before we get into this, I am not saying that this is the only way to achieve your goals, and I'm not even saying it's the best way. What I am saying is that this is simply what has worked best for me and what I believe to be the most actionable advice that I can give. All right, let's get into it. Get straight into the first point, which is actually how to set goals that we can actually then build systems to ensure we achieve them. Now, I think the thing that I see people do wrong all the time is they set goals based on outcomes. Now, if we are focused on the outcome, then it is out of our control. Okay, if we just say, okay, I want to make 50K a month. Okay, that is out of our control. The thing that is in our control and the way that we can actually control the outcome is by focusing solely on the inputs. Okay, so when we're setting goals and when we're setting goals that we can build systems to achieve, we are focused on the input. Okay, because a goal that is focused on the input is something that we can actually go and do daily. It's something that you can actually give your team members as a KPI. You can't go and tell your team, right, guys, our goal is to hit 100K a month. That's what you've got to do. What you can go and tell your team, and when this is what you do when you build a system, is you can go and tell them, right, your KPIs for today are 2 booked calls, or your KPIs for today are 3 pieces of content produced. Okay, and these are inputs that we can have direct control over. And after a certain point, and this is something Alex Hormozi talks about, you make the volume basically you increase the volume to negate the luck. And if we do so much volume to make it unreasonable that our outcome happens, that is how we predictably achieve goals. Okay, we figure out what is the output we want, and this is the process that we're going to go through. So, for example, we start with our desired revenue, or you can have, as long as it's a number, it's fine. Revenue is a great one to go for, but you can also do it based on reach, as long as you know your reach to revenue sort of conversion. But the idea is you start with a number because we can't scale something that isn't measured. And then we work backwards through all of the relative conversion rates. So for the example that I'm going to walk you guys through, it'll be for like sales calls. It would be pricing, close rates, call show rates, the qualification, the opt-in traffic, content reach, down to what happens every single day to guarantee that original number. Okay, so we have the original number in mind, and then we reverse engineer down to the point where we have inputs. Okay, and we know, okay, this is the specific input that is required. And if we hit this every single day, it's unreasonable that with that amount of volume, we're not going to achieve our goal. Okay. And then once you have a goal that is set up that way, then it's very easy to build a system that facilitates that input. Okay. It's hard to look at 100K a month and say, right, how do I build a system to achieve 100K a month? Okay. Because there's way too many variables and it's not actionable. Okay. Whereas how do I build a system to achieve 3 posts going out a day? That's very actionable. Okay. And that's a system that we can build. Okay. So that's the overall concept and the process. And yeah, let's get into it. But yeah, the overall point is that ambitious founders don't just set goals, they engineer them into reality by reverse engineering every metric, conversion rate, and get down to the daily input required, as I said. So we're going to walk you through an example. This will be brief because I just want to give you an idea of the concept. I'm sure majority of you guys watching, you understand, reverse engineering. But majority of people don't do it when it comes to actually setting a concrete goal. And then there's definitely a gap in figuring out, right, how do I take that goal and turn it into a system that ensures it happens? So that's what we're going to go through. So let's say the first point is obviously figuring out what's the target goal. We're going to go for revenue for this example. Target goal, 50,000 a month in new revenue. Okay, that's now this North Star that you as a founder and your team as well have something to work towards. Set that from the get-go, because if you don't have goals and you don't have targets, then what are you striving towards? What's going to keep people motivated? Your goal should not be to just maintain or just keep the business going. It should always be growth, because that benefits everyone, your clients, your team, yourself, everyone. All right. And then we're looking at a core offer. Okay. So let's say your core offer is 5,000 per client. So it's a high ticket service. Obviously, this completely ranges depending on what niche you're in. Obviously, your offer is going to be different. Your profit margins are going to be different. So you need to consider all of this when you're doing this, but this is the overall concept. Okay. So then if we go down to the next stage, we now obviously understand that if our revenue goal is, let me just move my face out of the way there. There we are. So step one is obviously break down the revenue formula. So figure out, okay, 50,000 is our revenue goal and our average sale, our per client value is 5K. And I would do this if I were you. If you're looking at like a long-term business that you're potentially looking to sell down the line, I would go based on LTV and not necessarily just, the initial sale. I would focus on what is one client worth to you and consider that when you sign them. So for example, if you know that every single client across their lifetime with you is at least going to go through one sort of ascension or they're going to buy this add-on, then consider that in your value, because in the long term, that's the revenue that you're going to see. And that's how you can predictably reach your goals after a certain amount of time. You need to get very specific. Okay. Anyway, with this example, we're looking at 10 clients needed. Obviously, I'm going to be going through and I'm going to be keeping it fairly basic for the sake of an example. But obviously, we need 10 clients a month. Okay. That's now something we're breaking it down and we're going to keep going until we get to the input. So at 50,000 in revenue and 5K average sale, we need 10 new clients a month. Okay. Now, obviously, if we look at our conversion metrics, so for myself, I'm doing this based off of, a typical B2B / consulting / AI offer, systems offer. Relevant to me, might be different to you, but if you're running a service-based business, majority of you guys are going to be running some sort of similar model. Okay. So first thing is understanding your conversion rates. Without your conversion rates, your reverse engineering isn't going to be accurate. And you're basically just guessing and fingers crossing that this amount of volume is going to equal this amount of clients. So arguably the first step that you guys would need to take before you can actually action this and build a reliable system is spend a couple months, a month even is normally enough, just tracking your numbers and making sure that you have the key conversion rates from, stranger to client, and understand those fully and what those look like in your business. And that way, when you're doing this, we can figure out the volume required to ensure it. And we're not just guessing. Okay. So for example, if we've got a content reach to landing page click, so this is assuming you're running like maybe a VSL funnel, let's say 3% clicks on the landing page given the reach. Okay. And you've got 20%, as a landing page visitor to opt in. You've got 25% of those people that opt in that are qualified. Okay. And then 30% of those people that are qualified lead to a booked call. You've got a 70% show up rate, which means 70% of those qualified people that book a call show up. And then you've got, a 25% close rate. I'm hoping all of your guys is higher. But then 1 in 4 calls becomes a client. Okay. So that way we know basically 4 calls is what we need to get a client, and all of these conversion rates, we're now going to be able to reverse engineer and figure out what is the number we need to get those 4 calls. Okay. So going down to the next stage, obviously good way to visualize it is just working from the top. I don't like that this is a pyramid. No pyramid schemes here. Moving on. So let's say we've got 10 clients needed. Okay. Then we've got to figure out, and we go from the top down, 10 clients needed, obviously with a 25% close rate. That means we need 40 calls a month. Okay. 40 calls a month shown in our calendar that are qualified in order to hit that 10 clients and hit that 50K a month in revenue. Okay. At a 70% booking rate, obviously we need 70% show up rate. We need 57 calls actually booked, assuming that 70% of those show up and the rest may be done. Okay. And when you're actually doing this, what I always recommend is go for a worst case scenario, because have you ever heard the saying, like, if you aim for the stars, worst case scenario, you'll end on the moon, right? So if we can go for the worst case scenario, so if you look at your worst month and you go, right, this was our close rate on our worst month. So worst case scenario, we have 4 calls. That way you can, first of all, basically guarantee that even if everything goes wrong, you're still going to hit your base level of conversion. But if things go slightly better, then you're going to be surprised by the outcome, and you'll actually be impressed because all you did was focus on the inputs that were based on your worst case scenario, if that makes sense. Okay. So then obviously 57 calls booked a month. Let's say if we're going based off of the qualified leads, then we need 50%, divide that by 30%. 57 calls booked, divide that by 30%. You need 190 qualified leads a month. And then we go down again, 760 opt-ins. To get those 760 opt-ins, we need 3,800 visitors a month. At 3% reach to landing page visitor, we need 127,000 impressions a month.
Okay, so you got to keep going, because now we're getting much closer to a goal that we can actually build a system for. Okay, and bear in mind, this is a complete example. I don't want you guys thinking it's as simple as just reaching 127,000 people a month and voila, you make 50K a month. It's not that simple. And what you'll realize is once you do this, the major benefit is having a bit of clarity on what your conversion rates look like, because then often it's genuinely normally one or two things that are stopping you from achieving what you want to. So it might be, in this case, it might be the qualification of the leads, in which case do we need to adjust our targeting, right? Or potentially it's the close rate. Like we're getting a good amount of booked calls, it's actually just the close rate, right? We need to focus on training our sales team, okay, improving our scripts, okay? So this reverse engineering, not only does it give you required inputs, which we'll get into, but also it gives you an idea of what do you need to fix in your business and what the bottleneck is. So without tracking, promise you, you're going blind. So if you don't know these numbers in your business and you're looking at this and thinking, right, I'm going to need to go and figure out what those numbers mean, you do, because without that, you're also never going to know where the problems are. And often it's not the things that you think. Okay, it's often the small things where it's like, oh, if we just fix that, that's going to fix our whole funnel. So always consider that as well. Now, if we go down even further, we've got our monthly impressions goal, assuming these conversion rates. Now we can actually split that up, okay, and we can turn it into something very easy to do. So let's say your 4 different content channels, okay. This is assuming you're going content, organic content, and bear in mind, as you scale, I'm going to suggest to all of you, it's considerably easier to predictably scale with paid traffic, solely for the reason that you can guarantee X amount of eyeballs on your ad for a certain amount of spend. And then it just becomes a case of weighing up the spend versus the predicted outcome and whether it's profitable or not. Okay. But let's say you're starting with organic, okay, and you're trying to figure out something that works first. You can still do this. It's just going to be slightly less easy to predict, because obviously sometimes your reach will depend on the algorithm. It depends on a lot of factors, right? That some of which are out of your control. When you switch to paid traffic, it's all in your control. You know your numbers, you control the spend, and you dictate how many views you get, okay? But let's say we want to get that 127,000 views, and we're going to go across Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube Shorts, and emails, okay? So now we can actually break this down and go, okay, we need 1,500 views a day on Instagram, we need 1,000 views on LinkedIn, we need roughly 1,000 on YouTube Shorts, and we need 1,000 a day through emails or DM direct messages, okay? Now, we break that down and we look at these numbers and we figure out, right, what do we need in order to hit those numbers? Okay. And it's also good to break it down to a daily point, because it's very easy to give someone a daily to-do list that they can just do as like the first part of their day. It's like, right, regardless of anything else, let's say you've got an assistant or a team member whose focus in this scenario is to manage your content. You can actually just tell them straight up, okay, before you do anything else to ensure that we're on track with our monthly target, this is what you're going to do at the start of the day, and you're just going to get these out of the way before you do anything else. And that way we're ensuring, bare minimum, worst case scenario, we're going to achieve our goals. Okay, so now you can actually turn that into actionable daily targets of post 2 to 3 short videos a day on Instagram. Okay, that's going to guarantee basically 1,500 views a month. Again, quick reminder, this is an example. This is not realistic. Okay, LinkedIn, post daily, engage in comments, send 20 to 30 strategic DMs. YouTube, upload 1 to 2 value focused shorts a day. Cold emails, send 50 to 100 targeted outreach messages a day. Now, this is really simplified down, but the benefit of this, and what I want you guys to realize, is that we can do this at whatever scale we want. Okay, like it doesn't matter if you're aiming for 10,000 a month or you're aiming for 10 million a month. Okay, regardless of the scale that you're going for, and your profit margins, regardless, we can break it down into daily actionables. Now, regardless of the daily actionable, it is achievable. If someone's done it, it can be done. Okay. And then it's just a case of, right, how much do I need to invest in the system in order to facilitate this? And obviously, the more you're investing in the system, the bigger the input, and therefore the bigger the outcome at the end, which is obviously going to get to your desired goal. Okay, so this is the overall idea. It's just understanding what are the daily targets, because that's something we can give to someone or give to a system. So for example, as I mentioned before, we can tell someone on our team, you need to do this. You need to post 2 to 3 short videos a day on Instagram, send 20 LinkedIn messages. We can tell them that. We can also tell AI, okay, that we need you to, reach out to this many people. We need to build an automation that sends 1,000 emails a day. Okay, we can do that. What we can't do is tell, instantly in a make.com automation, build a system to make me 100K a month. Okay, we're not there yet. We might be in, a few months. Things are moving fast. But as of right now, the idea is we need to get to actionable inputs because that's what we can build a system based on. Okay. Now, if we just keep going, as you can see, there's just a small breakdown. We can actually, and this is a really good thing to do if we're doing it via people. And I'll go into the two different ways that we actually build systems, which will pretty much be people and code. But regardless, if you can actually put together a daily scorecard of like, okay, this scorecard here, these daily actionables, this is the bare minimum. As long as we do those every single day, then we are on track to hit our goal. And worst case scenario, we end up doing more, right? And we have to do more. But as long as we hit those bare minimum, that's going to guarantee that we're at least on track. And then if you go over and you do more, then you're, even further guaranteeing that you're going to achieve your goal. Okay. So that is basically everything. I'm now going to get into how we actually build systems for goals like this, because once we have an actionable target, and I'll just continue with this example for the sake of it all making sense to you guys, then we can go and build a system and figure out what system do I need to put in place for this? What are the costs? What do I actually need to build it? And then you weigh up, and this is how you figure out whether it's a profitable business is, okay, what is the cost to run that system? What is my, expected outcome? And is that profitable? If we, are maybe 10% below benchmark or 20% below benchmark, are we still profitable? In which case it's a good model and it's a system that's worth building, okay? Because you're going to see an ROI. Now, I could get up a Miro board and walk through, but because we have a lovely whiteboard behind us, I'm actually just going to cut the loom here, get back on the camera and walk you guys through the next step, which is how do we build systems to achieve our goals, okay? So let's get into it. I will see you on the other side. Okay, so yes, on to step 2, actually building out a system that achieves your goal. Now, I don't know if you guys can actually see this because of the light. I've written it in red. Hopefully it's visible. But if it's not, don't worry, because I'm going to walk through every single step and I'm going to be saying a lot, so you should be able to understand it. Either way. Okay, so when it comes to actually building a system, you basically have 2 core options. Okay, we've got delegation and then we've got automation/AI. So the choices are, is there a piece of software that can do it for us? Can we use tech to actually handle the task? Or do we need to implement people? Now, or there's the third option, which is actually a mixture of the both, which is often the case and often the highest leverage. So what I'm going to just talk quickly about is what does it actually mean when we're delegating something and building a system? Okay, what does it actually mean when we're building a system using AI or automation? And then I'm actually going to go into the goal scenario that we have, which is currently 30 DMs, 1 times short form, 100 emails, 1 times long form. That was sort of the overall idea of the example we went through. And I'm just going to walk you through exactly how I would build a system for each of those tasks to ensure that these actionables actually happen every single day, okay? And I'm just going to walk you through how I would do that if it was my business, okay? So, firstly, we've got delegation. When we're building a system using people, okay, the core things, we can actually boil it down, and you see I've kept it very simple here. It doesn't actually need to be that complex. It's what, when, who, and how. Okay, so what that means is what needs to get done, when does it need to happen, who owns it fully, okay, and then how does that person or that group of people actually achieve it. Okay, so those are the main things. Okay, now when we're looking at costs, because obviously as I mentioned before, in order to build a profitable system, the whole concept is we're comparing the cost of building that system compared to the desired outcome, which in this case we're looking at 50K a month given these inputs. Okay, so your cost when it comes to hiring people is obviously the hiring and the actual advertising to find the right talent. It's the training of the people to actually get them to a point where they can complete the what. And it's any sort of software or materials that you're paying for that they might use in order to fulfill that task, okay? So in this case, what needs to happen, okay? We need 30 DMs to go out, we need 1 time short form piece of content to be posted, 100 emails to go out, and 1 piece of long form to be created/posted as well. When does it need to happen? Every single day. This is a daily input, okay? Who owns it fully? Obviously, in this case, it's going to be, I think their job title would be a content manager as a whole, or content production manager, okay? They're going to be handling it. How? Okay, this is going to be a mix of, okay, we're looking at workflows, For the emails, that's something I think we can easily automate, which I'm going to go into. We've got the how, which is basically breaking down what is that outcome in a set of tasks. So you go even further. If we look at one piece of short form content, you're looking at, first of all, ideation and research, okay, to ensure that it reaches the views that we're actually after. So it's the research, it's the ideation, coming up with the idea for the video, it's the scripting, it is the editing, and it's the posting. Okay, so you've got these 5 components, and you're going to need to ensure that each of those gets done. Okay, so this is where it gets a bit bigger, because that might require multiple people. We're now looking at, okay, we need an editor. Okay, then arguably the rest can be handled by tech, but there's an editor, and then there's obviously the person who films it. And depending on the level you're at, you might also need a production team to ensure that it's high quality, on brand, etc. Okay, when does it need to happen? Obviously daily, that's fine. And we've sort of gone through the how in terms of those different steps. So that is what it would look like for a person, okay? And you've just got to look at the cost there of what that would mean in terms of how much does an editor cost, okay? How much does a production team cost? How much is it going to cost to hire and train? Because if you don't consider all of these costs when you're building a system, then the chances are you're going to get to the end and realize that you weren't as profitable as you could have been if you'd actually figured out a smarter way to do it. And if you don't consider all of them as well, you might end up building a non-profitable system that looks good on paper, but then you've missed out key costs that at the end, when you actually reach that outcome of 50,000 a month, it's going to be bit into so much more. And yeah, it's just not a predictable way to scale. So now if we look at automation / AI, obviously my preference, I'm a little bit biased, but we've basically got different options here. So we've got, first of all, we can buy a SaaS. So plenty of people are building softwares as a service. Now, before you go and do anything, often there's a simple answer that you're not considering. Okay, you think it's got to be something complex. When you're actually looking to achieve a certain input and one of these tasks, first think, okay, is there an app that someone has just designed that does this? Okay, is there a SaaS that I can literally just pay for monthly that does this exact task? And then it's just weighing up the cost of that subscription versus the expected outcome. Okay, a majority of the time, it's not going to be 50,000 a month for a piece of software, but if you use it the right way, then it can have a really big outcome. Okay, next one is pretty much build a workflow. Those are borderline the only 2 options. Okay, is you buy software that has already been trained to do it, or you build a custom workflow that does the necessary tasks. So for example, you build a workflow that goes and does the research, it does all of the scripting, it sends the script to the person who needs to record it, they record it, they upload it, it automatically goes to an editor who then uploads it to a scheduling app that schedules it across, for example, I think in this case it was LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. That's basically what it would look like in terms of the workflow. So those are your 2 options, okay? And the costs are literally just the software. They're very predictable, in all honesty. The only thing that you might want to consider is API usage, the cost of tokens. If you're building a custom workflow and you're hosting it on some form of cloud, often there's a cost per usage, so you have to consider that as you scale that your costs are going to increase, but normally it's relatively linear. And then obviously, for building that workflow, if it's custom and you don't have someone in the team, then it's hiring a freelancer, hiring an agency, and then again it's weighing up the cost of what does it cost to build this system originally, and obviously this is exactly what I do personally. It's weighing up what is the investment to build this system, what is the predicted outcome, and then weighing up whether we think that's profitable or not, okay? And if you're working with a good agency, their goal will always be an ROI, and for me personally, we go off value-based pricing, so it is based on the fact that we will charge for this because we know that predictably it's going to provide this much value, and therefore it makes sense for both of us, okay? Freelancers, Upwork, you may struggle to find similar scenarios. Anyway, let's get into how we can actually achieve this goal in terms of these inputs to achieve the outcome that we are after. So I'm going to talk about in my specific scenario because I've realized it works really well for me, this example. I have a personal brand. What are you watching right now? I post YouTube content. I post short form content. I have an email newsletter. So I actually have basically all of these things going on, and I can actually just walk you through the systems that we have in place for them, and you'll understand how it sort of correlates with how you should build a system to ensure that input. Okay, so let's start with the short form and long form. This is exactly how I would do it. Okay, the very first thing I would do, in fact, I may just sit down for this because we no longer need the whiteboard and it's going to be a little bit easier. Okay, so
what I would actually do is, for this system, we now know that we have the different stages, which are the research and ideation. We then have the scripting, we have the editing, and we have the posting. Those are the different components of all of the content there. So that applies the exact same for short form and long form. So to ensure that happens every single day, what do we need to do and how much is it going to cost? Okay, so in my humble opinion, we do not need people for this necessarily. We need an editor. Okay, so there's 2 team members, and I'm going to say majority of, for this goal, you're going to basically have a mix of both, because there are certain things where AI isn't there yet, automation isn't there yet, and you do need people. Combining both is where the maximum leverage is, in my opinion. So what we would do is, first of all, train an AI copywriter for the different pieces of content. So we would train an AI and we would build a custom AI workflow that, first of all, okay, does all the research, the competitor research, to understand, okay, what are the trending topics, okay, what are the winning video ideas, winning hooks, everything like that, to actually have some data to work with. Then, taking that data, we're going to feed it into AI, an AI that is already custom trained on our ICP, our deliverables, okay, and our tone of voice, and the structure of the videos that we want. So, for example, hook, body, curiosity, rehook, call to action at the end, I think is similar to what ours is off the top of my head. So once you've got the research, that's going into a trained AI that is trained on your tone of voice. That spits out a script that is then sent automatically. You could do this via Slack, email, regardless. You can have an automation that sends that to the person who's going to be recording it. In my case, it's me. In a different team's case, it might be a UGC creator. It might be a freelancer that they've just hired for an ad or whatever. But we can actually automate the outbound of the sort of delivery of that script. So we're removing manual steps as well. And that makes it more scalable, because it means it's very easy to do it every single day and it's not massively time consuming, which if you look at my short form content, you'll see I've posted every single day, and I promise you it's not very time consuming. It's one of the least strenuous or hard things that I do. Okay, so it's about building a system that allows for that. Okay, then once we've done that, obviously you'd record it. That would get uploaded to a Google Drive. I'm literally just going off of what we do. Gets uploaded to a Google Drive. Our editor obviously has access. They have a system where we, are able to track and provide revisions and everything like that. Once that is completed, we'll have that uploaded onto, we use GHL, and we've got a scheduler where we'll actually schedule the content so that we're normally, about a week ahead in advance or a month ahead in advance. You can go as far as you want. Basically, it means that as you record content, if you get ahead, you can use that to your advantage, schedule it ahead, and you don't need to worry about content for the next month. As long as you record some in the meantime, you're going to be fine, and you're going to have more by the time that you need to post more. Okay, so that's what I would do for the short form. I would do the exact same for long form, and I would basically ensure, because this is just a workflow, okay, and you can literally set it up so that it runs like every single day, okay, so that every single day I can log in and I have a script. For us, we actually batch record it. So in fact, this is probably an easier way to do it if you're actually going to go ahead and build this, is I would have the same exact system, except instead of just providing you one script every time it goes through that process of research, filter through your ICP, your deliverables, and your sort of video structure, I would have it give me 5 scripts every single day, or I would have it give me 5 scripts once a week. Okay, and you can literally set that up once and just, with platforms like Zapier, Make.com, NA10, GHL as well, I think you could probably build this as well. You can set them so they just repeat automatically once a week. So in my case, once a week, I receive an email with 5 scripts. I go through, I record them, I stand back. That's the only input required from me to ensure that we reach those 5 videos a week, or a video every single day, for example. Okay, I would then do the exact same for long form. You would probably just do it slightly differently. Again, training an AI with, research on what is your competitors doing, what are the winning topics, what does the SEO and the bio need to be, what is a really good hook, and likewise, you're just going through that same process of ideation, research, scripting, off to the editor, scheduled for posting, okay, and that is your system, okay? That's going to ensure the one-time piece of long form. If we're doing this every single day, then again, you would just batch record it. You would have one day where you go through all the long form, you have one day you go through the short form, and that would ensure that it happens every single day. Next thing we've got is the 100 emails, okay? Let's be real, this is not hard. This is unbelievably easy. Again, it's going to be a workflow. The exact way I would do it, and the way I used to do it when I was doing cold outreach for the agency, is we would literally set up we would normally split test about sort of 3 to 5, like 20 long email campaigns, like 20 emails long, okay? And we would set those up in advance, and a very easy way to come up with the email copy is, again, train an AI on your copywriting tone and basically give you 20 different variations of campaigns, and that way you can do a lot of testing without a whole lot of work, okay? Then we set that up in advance once, okay, and potentially you put together a workflow that goes something along the lines of, okay, lead scraper goes and visits this website and scrapes all of this data for leads, goes through AI, which is perfect for enriching the data, filtering through, coming up with customized openers. There's tons of different systems that you can use for this. I know you can use Appify and Instantly. I know you can build systems with it like Make and Instantly. You can literally just build a workflow if you run NA10 or Zapier, where it's literally just research, lead scraper, generate those, add them to an email campaign, import the contacts, add them to a campaign, and have that just happen every day. Again, we can build a system for that where it basically ensures that, 100 leads get added to the campaign every single day, and therefore we're sending out 100 emails a day, if not more, because obviously the follow-ups, so it sort of grows exponentially. But there you go, you now have a system for emails that happens, you build it once, you're completely uninvolved. And finally, the last one is 30 DMs a day. Again, there is ways to automate this. I don't want to go into them too much because some of them I don't think are allowed through Instagram, but a bunch of different ways is you could, for example, hire a VA to work 2 hours a day. That would cost you about £6 a day, and their sole job could be to send 30 DMs a day. And voila, we now have the input guaranteed every single day, and we have the cost. And to be honest, that is all you need. Like, I am trying to keep this as simple as possible so that it's very actionable, but in order to achieve those goals and reach that goal that we are after right there, it is literally just a case of understanding, okay, what is required, what can I set up, whether that is a team of people, and when you're thinking about what do they need, okay, you've got to think about, okay, do they need an SOP to follow? So for example, a VA there, they need an SOP to follow to actually understand how they're reaching out to these people. Okay, do they need software? Okay, is there a certain software or access that they need in order to complete this task? Okay, so you've got to think about all these different things, but once you do and you have an understanding of, okay, either we can build a system for it which literally just requires some tech, we set it up once and then it runs every single week or every single day, whatever is required for the input we want, or when it's a person, it's simply, you know, giving them the training and the resources and the SOPs for them to understand, okay, this is your task, this is what you need to do every day, this is how you do it, and then that will happen every single day as long as you train them properly and you have those resources. That will happen every single day without you doing anything, okay? And once these are set up and built, it really is just a case, and before you go ahead and build them, I would highly recommend, is figuring out what's the expected cost of this, what's the expected outcome, and then weighing up that profitability. All right, apologies, my camera died, but that is literally it. That is how you build systems in order to achieve goals. The first thing that you do is you figure out, okay, what are the KPIs, what are the actual metrics and numbers and volume that we need to hit, myself, software, or a team member, what do we need to hit to ensure that our goal is guaranteed? Okay, how can we make it unreasonable that with that amount of volume, this result happens? Okay, and then it's just a case of figuring out, okay, how do we find something that is the most profitable? What's the most effective, what's the most profitable, and is it profitable is the biggest thing, is understanding the cost of the system and building the system versus the expected outcome of that system. Okay, and that is literally it. So next time that you want to achieve a goal, before you just say, I want to make 50 grand in a month, understand what that looks like in your business first, understand your conversion rates, and then figure out what system do we need to go and design to ensure that those inputs happen. Because in order to be a successful founder, I've said it before, you need to be the architect, you need to be the one designing the system, and not the bricklayer, the person who's actually working and putting in the work. You need to be the one designing it, because that way you can ensure that what you know needs to happen, happens. Okay? That is everything for this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed and found this valuable. Please do drop any questions in the comments. I will do my best to respond to every single one. I always do. And if you do need help building systems that actually achieve the goals and aspirations that you have, feel free to book in a call. I will leave a link below and hopefully we can have a great chat. But other than that, I think I've covered everything. So I will catch you guys in the next one. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and yeah, I'll see you soon.